I'm Molly Stafford. I'm the Director of Career Development Office, which is right downstairs from us, for any of you who haven't been down. We have not only great career advising, document review, mock interviews, anything else you ever wanted to know, but we also have coffee and popcorn on Thursdays and maybe Tuesdays. I don't think that.
With coconut oil.
What was that?
With coconut oil.
With coconut oil, it's very healthy, evidently.
Yes.
So we're really, I am so pleased to see everybody here. So thank you for being here. And a special thanks to our panelists. We're really honored to have them speak to us today. I'm going to give them the floor in a minute, but a couple notes before that. Some things for you guys to just kind of keep in mind as you listen to our panelists talk about how they got their summer jobs. First thing is, everybody's going to have their own personal way of navigating law school in general. You might have already kind of started learning that you have different study practices than some of your friends. That it took me a while to learn that I have different study needs than my friends. So I had to do things on my own and then come back. So you might kind of, well, some of you are, how many 2Ls do we have? How many 1Ls do we have? Ah, okay. So the same goes for your job search, whether it's your summer job search or on down the road it's your postgraduate job search. You need to find what fits for you and what works for you personally. Some of us are more kind of gregarious and outgoing and can literally charm a receptionist into, accepting an application by going in person. Some of us don't want to do that. That sounds horrible and heinous, and they'd rather die than go into an office cold and introduce themselves. So you have to know your personal style. Lots of things work. Remember to be creative. Remember this is your process. We're here to support you downstairs in the CDO, so absolutely any questions you have, anything like that, but it's going to be your job to get your jobs, right? Study abroad is a great opportunity we have at this school. We have a lot of amazing programs. Just remember that if you decide to do that, you also want to figure out how to cobble together some practical work experience during the times when you're not abroad, or maybe when you're abroad. People do really creative things around that. Come downstairs if you want to talk to me later about some ideas on that. I think that's all I want to say. So panelists, if you will be so kind as to just take a couple minutes, each of you, introducing yourselves and telling us quickly about your 1L job search and where you ended up. And then what I'll do is ask you different questions after we get through the introductions.
I'm Amanda Kelly. I'm a second-year day student. And last year for my job search, I started out over winter break redoing my resume so that it fit the format that the CDO recommended for a legal resume. Sent it to the CDO over winter break and got feedback and edits. And that way, when I came back for the beginning of the semester, I was ready to go. That was really important because there are on-campus and off-campus job fairs almost immediately in January. I went to Public Interest Public Service Day, PIPS Day, which is an event at Hastings that has a ton of public interest and public service employers there. You can bid ahead on interviews, which is what I did, but you can also just show up and they have interviews available. I ended up interviewing for one job and then also going to the job fair that they had and giving out my resume, meeting a lot of people, that sort of thing. I also went to a job fair on campus, environmental job fair. Wasn't really interested in environmental jobs, but most of the employers there were pretty general practices that just happened to do some environmental work. And then I went to a random California Bar committee on insurance meeting that happened to be held on campus. And someone there said, send me your resume if you're interested in an internship. So through those three things, I ended up having a lot of interviews. I got multiple offers. I got an offer from every single one of those things. And I ended up interning with the California Department of Insurance's legislative division this year. I was actually surprised that I got so many offers because I also went to Salzburg over the summer. And you would think taking 3 weeks off in the middle of July wouldn't work out. But a lot of the employers, it's free help, and they're really willing to work around your schedule. It worked out for me because I was with the legislative job that the legislature's not in session from July 3rd until the end of July, so I just wasn't there for the intersession break. Other employers said, well, if you take those 3 weeks off, just stay 3 weeks into the semester. Totally willing to work with it. So lots of job fairs and networking is what I did.
Hi, my name is Kayla Cox. I'm also a second-year day student, and I started my job search last year pretty much the same way as Amanda did. I spent winter break preparing my resume and cover letter for the different fields of law that I thought I was interested in. And then I later on just tailored the different cover letters to what I was applying for. I also attended the Public Interest Public Service Fair at Hastings in San Francisco. And I interviewed at 3 different places there and then actually got offers from all of them, which I was really surprised about, and I'll say a little comment about that later. Then I went to the environmental law fair here on campus with Anthony, and one of the people that I spoke to at the interview, at the job fair, she later interviewed me for the job that I decided to take for my first year summer. And the job that I took for my first year summer, I don't know if Molly started putting out the notices for the Sacramento County Bar Diversity Fellowship.
Watch your emails, they'll come, information will come from Isabella Hannon later this week or next week.
So yeah, I ended up accepting that fellowship, and what they do is they take you and they place you randomly at one of the firms that volunteers to host one of the fellows for the summer, and it was an incredible program, so I definitely recommend, if not only thinking about applying for it. So when I interviewed for that job, the interviewer was the lady I met at the job fair, so it made it really easy to talk to her, and it was a great interview. So it was just a little bonus to remind me, and I can share this with you, to put yourself out there and network, because it helps even when you don't think it will. And yeah, that's about it.
Anthony Chrysostom, you might have seen me around, 2L day student. So I also started during winter break. I started just by applying to the Diversity Fellowship. Did not receive that, unfortunately, even though we talked about it a lot. And what I did a lot was after that, then I started, because I thought I had a good idea of what my resume should look like, and then when I realized I didn't get it, then I started having the career development office look over my resume. Because, I mean, you might think that your resume is tailored exactly how it should be, but legal resumes, man, they're a different monster altogether. They want different things. So that really helped, getting my resume through them really helped me kind of pair it how it should be. And then I went to the public interest job fair that was at George, that PLSS holds?
Yeah.
Yes, that PLSS holds. And so, you're going to meet a lot of employers, and a lot of them are going to want, a lot of them are going to say we're only looking for 2L students, but if you just talk to them and let them know, hey, I'm a 1L student, this is the kind of things that I'm interested in, they would very likely be willing to take a chance on you during the summer. And so I interviewed with the Shriver Project, which does housing mediation for low-income families, and the California Department of Managed Healthcare. And I did receive offers from both of them, but I actually ended up working in Italy. Professor Vitello has, there's a friend at the university that Professor Vitello is still good friends with, that he takes in 3 or 4 interns every summer to work on European Union criminal law. You guys there's this research project to be done, and you guys it's sociology and law all in one. So I ended up doing that for the first 7 weeks of summer, and then, I didn't get paid, but they pay for your living, and you're in Italy. Hey, so.
You're in Parma, right?
I was in Parma, yeah, I was at the University of Parma, and it was just a great, awesome experience to be in, and yeah.
Hi, I'm Brenda Bass. I'm a third-year day student, so I've had 2 summers worth of jobs under my belt. And I don't think any of you are 2Ls, but my experience was relatively similar both summers. I ended up getting all of my, I hate networking, so I'm just going to put that out there in the beginning, but I got all of my jobs through networking. So it happens even if you don't like it. And most of those were tips that I got from my fellow students who were a year or 2 ahead of me. For example, this last summer I was in a class with a then 3L, now graduate. And I was talking about how I was like stressing about trying to find a summer job because I kept applying places and kept getting no response back. And she was like, well, I know you like environmental and water law, and I'm currently working for a really reputable water law firm, Somack Simmons & Dunn, and if you send me your resume, I'll put in a good word for you. And it worked out, long story short. So that really worked. So don't discount the relationships you make amongst your cohort here, because they can be really useful. For my 1L summer, I got a tip from another person at the environmental law fair, so please come, it's great. And I interviewed there, and I got a part-time position through that, but part-time is not all the time, and the summer's kind of long, so I talked to a lawyer that I had met before law school, and she gave me the name of somebody else who I talked to. She couldn't offer me a job, but she referred me to Ag Council of California, which is a industry advocacy group. And I interviewed there and got my other half of the summer taken care of. So I did 2 days in a law firm, 2 days with the lobbying firm, and it was a great experience. And I don't think you should also discount the advocacy on the legislative side, because there's a lot of good like client interaction and just policy information that you can pick up at a place like that.
Great, thank you all. So a couple things that I heard. One thing was that several of you got rejections or didn't hear back from some of the places you may have submitted applications or interviewed. Is that right? So, so definitely remember that, because it can feel discouraging, and you might just walk away going, God, they're so successful, I'm never going to be like that, right? They're awesome students, they have these great job opportunities. That's not going to be me. Just remember that it always feels easier on the other side once you're talking about having gotten a job than it does where you're sitting wondering how you're going to get that job. So don't be, try not to be easily discouraged, and remember that it does take just kind of plugging through, sometimes feeling a little bit that there are challenges with it, right? We like to kind of say the more rejections you get, the better, because that means you're putting yourself out there, and one of these times, it's not going to be a rejection, right? So, Amanda, can you tell us something that was super effective, that surprised you maybe, or maybe you knew it was going to be effective, but it's one thing that you feel like, yeah, that worked for me?
The thing that worked the best for me was what I call semi-cold emailing. If I met somebody at an event or a job fair, or even if I didn't meet them, they were just speaking, sending a follow-up email got great response. I could say, I met this person who told me to talk to you, or I saw you speak at this event. That's really ultimately how I got my job. They weren't even planning to start interviewing students, and I said, I saw you speak at this event, I went to this job fair, and these 2 people said I should speak with you. Here's my information, and I ended up getting an offer in the interview because it was, well, we haven't started interviewing anyone yet, but make my life easy, and I won't have to put an ad out there and find other people, I'll just hire you. And I did that with other people that I met at the environmental job fair, always following up, even if I didn't think they would know who I was, that semi-cold email with some sort of reference to some connection really helped.
So what it looked like, it was nice to see you at the job fair. What would you say in an email?
Great to talk with you. I really enjoyed getting to learn more about blah, blah, blah. I am interested in blah, blah, blah that you do. Would you be willing to talk more? And
So not necessarily, do you have a job for me, but more, would you be willing to talk with me more about this field or about? Thank you. Kayla, what is something you would have done differently?
So when I originally read your email and you posed some questions to think about, one was what would you like recommend to do? And I initially thought like just start applying, like actually sit down and do it. But then I thought a little more about it and I realized that you really need to think about what you want before you start applying, because yes, you'll get a lot of rejections, and even worse than rejections, sometimes you don't hear back from them, which is even more awkward. But you will hear back from people, and then when you do, you have a decision to make, and it makes that decision-making process a lot easier if you think about what you actually want in the first place, so then when you have these offers on the table, you can make the right choice.
Thank you, that's great. Anthony, if you have one piece of advice you'd give about the summer job process, what would it be?
Probably that you'd be surprised as to the skills that you have that would be relevant to employers already. Like, how many of you have administrative or like clerical experience only? Or see, so you know that was pretty much my only experience coming into law school, and then you'd be surprised, you know, how if you put it on your resume, how important job or employers are looking for that. Like, because I know, because to be frank, in your first year, you won't be certified yet, which is a term you'll learn about, but so you'll be doing a lot of client intake and client interviewing, which is especially important if you have clerical experience because you're on the front line talking to people every day. So employers really look to little things like that that you'd be surprised about. So I guess just play up to the skills that you do have, because you'd be surprised how employers would really love that experience and how relevant they think it would be to hiring you as their summer intern.
That's fantastic advice. So many times I hear from people coming in, I don't have any legal advice, therefore I don't have any legal experience, therefore I don't have a resume. Really, you know, what am I going to put on my resume? And it is so true that there's a lot to show for, hey, I showed up at that job at In-N-Out. I mean, really, I know how to be a professional in that I know how to show up and I know how to be responsible and work in a high volume, high customer service. I mean, these are all, lawyering is often a customer service industry, or almost always. So really, those skills have a lot to do with what you might be doing in a summer job. Brenda, you hate networking.
It's so awkward, I don't know.
Can you tell us, so you talked about how you were just kind of talking with a friend about your job search. That is actually networking, because networking really just means talking and establishing and connecting with people and establishing relationships. But can you talk to us a little bit more about how you would define networking now that you've been through it a little bit? And do you still hate it? Are there ways that you get around hating it as much?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten better at it, and part of it is just that I've built a lot of confidence in myself and my ability as a law student, and hopefully an attorney in 12 months. But because when you're nervous about yourself or you're self-conscious or you think you have nothing to offer, it's hard to approach an attorney who's in a hiring position and talk to them about what they do and how how you might be able to get a job out of this. But so work on self-confidence, that's helped. And then as you get more used to the environment and interacting with people who are in the field, you start realizing that there are people too, and so you can start figuring out how to interact with them just like you would interact with your classmates. So you have things in common, and for me, I knew coming into law school that I really wanted to do environmental and water law. So as long as you can kind of keep apprised with current events in that regard, and if you do your research ahead of time, like before a networking event, like for example, I know this sounds like shameless plugging and it kind of is, but still. Before our like environmental and natural resources career fair, we release a list of everybody who's going to attend. And so you can kind of go down the list and triage like, oh, these people sound interesting to me. Look up their websites, you know, try to figure out what their deal is, and then start trying to make the connections between you and them, and that's going to make coming up and talking to them a lot easier, because then you'll say like, oh, I know you're working on zoning issues. I love zoning. Like, let's talk about this. And that makes it better. But like, and I've always liked the career fair thing where everybody kind of knows that you're coming to like ask for a job, because when it's like a really social networking thing, that was always kind of weird, because I'm like, I'm here because I want you to hire me, but I'm supposed to pretend like that's not what I want, and I'm supposed to be like a friend, so that was, but it gets better as your confidence increases and you just get, you know, you feel like you know where you're going. I don't know if that even answered the question.
Absolutely answered the question, thank you, absolutely. Part of confidence building can just be practicing ahead of time. You know, we talk about elevator speeches. And that's kind of the, yes, you're nodding in the back, yeah, you know your elevator speech, I know you do. So if I come up and say, you know, hi, you're first year.
Yeah, hi. How are
Nice to
you?
meet you.
Hey,
what are you?
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So what are you doing in law school?
I'm trying to figure that out, but I think I like litigation. What about you? Like, have you done law school as well?
Perfect. See, look at that. So, okay, so you have a quick response and then you bounce it off and ask me a question. That's fantastic. Especially if you're shy and you really don't have a lot to say. I don't know what the heck I'm doing in law school, and that's perfect, right? But I'm not exactly sure what I want to do yet. But I think I'm interested in litigation. Try to kind of cling on to something. It might be I came in thinking that I wanted to do criminal justice because my family's, you know, I have a parent who's a police officer, but you know, now I'm really, I did well in my property class. Or, you know, any little thing that can give us something to go on. Because then I can go, oh, litigation, well, what interests you about litigation, right? There's something for me to talk about. And just having that a little bit practiced, and it doesn't need to be like, you know, I know exactly what I'm saying, so I sound like a robot. It's just thinking in your mind a little bit about what you might say if someone asks you that can really help your confidence. And you don't have to have the answer. So it can be, I really don't know, but I'm excited to be here because I love my torts class, right? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone loves it, but okay, right? So that's great. What I want to do now, I think I want to open it up for questions from you. And we definitely have more topics that I can quiz you on if we don't have a lot of questions, but I'd like to leave enough time for that. So questions.
Is there a difference between applying for like a private firm versus working for the government or something like that?
Yeah. I've worked essentially only for private firms, so I guess I can start there. I know a lot of times like state agencies will do spring on-campus interviews, and it's a little bit more formalized process. Depending on the type of firm you're working for or you're looking at, that might be also an OCI process. Like the big law firms do an on-campus interview, like very formalized, there's deadlines and all this stuff. My first law firm job was a 2-attorney firm. So it was, I emailed them, I was like, hey, I got your information from the president of the Environmental Law Society, and she said you were interested in interns. I would love to be an intern, you know. At its root, that's what I said, and then they called me in for an interview, and then it went from there. So it was a very flexible, like, process. And then with last summer, it's a mid-sized law firm, and they don't have a very strict hiring like schedule because it depends on, you know, the workflow and all that stuff. So that, like, I ended up getting both of those jobs in like April, like just before finals, so I was freaking out. But like with the smaller and mid-sized firms, you can, sometimes they won't know if they're in a position to hire somebody, especially if it's a paid position, until like just before you're ready to start. So
Great question, Anthony. Yes.
And then working for the public, actually, I used to work in HR for the state of California, so the process for that's a little bit different. I know I'm going to be working at the county next semester for the public defender's office. So for that, it's just you kind of get it through the OCI, through the on-campus interviews, or through the job fairs too. It's not too different of a process. I mean, they interview you, and then once they give you the green light, if they like you, then it's just the same kind of forms you fill out. But if you're not going through the on-campus route and you just happen to know of state agencies that are hiring, and a lot of them, especially in Sacramento, are looking for student legal interns, there's a website that calhr.ca.gov. That's the website where you can actually just search for student legal intern positions. I know that a lot of friends have found positions through that way. So calhr.ca.gov.
And I don't know if this is what you were asking, but it kind of relates to what I was saying earlier about deciding what you want. It is very different working in a firm than it is working for a state agency or any sort of like public interest government job. So I do recommend like figuring out which side you think you want to be on and like what kind of goes more with your personality. And I think you can set up like informational meetings with attorneys in different fields to see like what kind of personalities there are in that field of law and like if you see yourself there or if you see yourself more over here.
During your 1L orientations, you'll be hearing about our alumni mentor network, and that's a really great place to start if you don't have any connections with attorneys in different practice areas. There are attorneys, we have about 460 something attorneys who are alumni who have volunteered to give you advice. So, an easy thing to do would be to email one of them and say, hi, I've selected you through the Alumni Mentor Network. I know nothing about estate planning and tax law at a big firm. I wonder if I could come down to your office and just kind of pick your brain about what that looks like for about 20 minutes. Then you get to see their law office, which is part of it, right? You just kind of see, can I picture myself here? And then also talk to them about it. And you can do that with quite a few, 3 at a time, as many as you need. Amanda, any thoughts on that too?
Yeah, well, I have only worked in government jobs since starting law school. That's all I'm interested in. And I think for your 1L summer, there is a little fluidity. You don't have to go through spring OCIs, although certainly that's a great opportunity. I actually would have had I not accepted an offer before the OCIs. But because they're unpaid positions for 1Ls, they seem to be more flexible. They just have you sign a form that you know that this is volunteer and your hours are not going to your CalPERS account. Because I got my state job through networking and not through any sort of formal process.
That's a good note too. It doesn't have to be formal, even though later for postgraduate jobs, the HR, the application process for government is very formal.
And certainly for second year, I got my government position through fall OCI, and it was a rigid process, and I know that the post-bar process with that agency is also very, take a test and get certified and do all these other things.
Yeah, jump through that hoop and then this one and then that one and then get there eventually. Although there's a lot of creativity in that still, so talk to me later about the postgraduate government job search. Does everyone know what we're talking about when we talk about OCI, on-campus interviewing? For the most part? Okay. So we have employers who come 2 times a year in the fall. Actually, it's being pushed up every year, so this year it was, the process started in the summer, and they came right as school started. They were on campus. And we'll have another batch of employers, prospective employers, in the spring. Generally, our spring OCI is smaller and more government and public interest oriented. It's because bigger firms and most often private firms and bigger firms, they're able to plan ahead a little bit more than the smaller firms and public interest and government, as far as what kind of capacity they have for interns and who they'll be able to pay and that kind of thing. So that's why they happen in the fall. So you'll catch those next year, and be sure to remember now that you actually bid online through McGeorge Careers Online. You bid online during this summer, so this next summer, for your next summer job. The spring one, I invite all of you to apply, because even if you aren't sure about a particular employer, I don't know if I want to work there, what is there to lose from applying? Kind of forces you to get your materials together if you haven't already, and then maybe having an interview. It's on campus. It's easy, right? Get dressed up in a suit and come to campus, and you get to have an interview and get to have real live interview practice. So I encourage everybody to participate in that, and definitely in the job fairs too that will be coming up. So keep a watch on your email for all of that. Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, just a quick question. About the OCI, how many people actually get hired through that process? And how?
About 10% of the student body.
Okay.
So that's a really great question. And the kind of the follow-up question for me that we hear a lot is, is it only for the top 10%, taking 10% of the class? Not at all. Not at all. We have lots of employers, including some of the private firms, who don't care about your GPA or class rank. We do have some who are like, nope, we only want the top 5%, we only want the top 15%, we only want the top 25%, but it absolutely is, it may be about 50% in the fall and even less in the spring. So great questions, yeah. Great. Before, I'd like to let you all go so you have time to grab lunch or just have a breather before your next class, but I want to make sure to plug a couple different things. So watch your emails for the SCBA Diversity Fellowship information. Tonight there's going to be an international law internship workshop. We've got our great organizer right here in the back. Room B. And it's going to be in classroom B, 5 to 6. And it's talking about international law internships. So definitely go to that. That's a really valuable resource.
We're serving pizza.
And, oh, okay, and dinner is done, right? Done and done. Any last words of advice? We'll just take a couple more minutes, about maybe three more minutes, 5 more minutes, and just hear from each of you one last piece of departing wisdoms.
Everything is an opportunity. If somebody says we're only hiring second years or we've already hired for the summer, keep in touch with them. I gave my resume to the agency that I will be working for next summer at the environmental job fair. They said, well, we've already hired everyone and we only take second years, but you're so interested, let me have your resume. And showing that interest early on definitely helped out. So if somebody says no, it's not necessarily a no.
That's a great advice. I had somebody come into my office just recently this year and say, tell me a story that she wrote and she got rejected for a postgraduate job. She had an interview, she thought it went really well, she got rejected. It was just a very quick rejection email. Thanks so much for applying. We enjoyed our interview. You were not selected. She wrote back a thank you note. Just replied to the email. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interview. I still remain very interested in your firm and I'd like to keep connected with you. That's all she wrote. The guy was so impressed with the fact that she even bothered to kind of follow up and thank him for rejecting her that he said, well, we don't have any positions here, but are you interested in our LA office? And literally within a week, she was moving down to the LA office for a postgraduate law job. Big stuff. So rejections can lead actually to opportunities.
Oh, and then I would also remember that you have like a clinical field placement requirement. So one of the jobs that I was like, oh, I really want to do, but I'm going to pick this other one last summer, I'm actually doing a field placement with them this year. So you can keep in touch with them so that you can have an avenue for your field placement, or you can do one of the clinics.
That's a great point too.
Just keep going at it. I didn't when I didn't get the diversity internship, I was actually really bummed that I didn't get an interview. But honestly, just keep going at it. You're not going to get every single job that you apply for. That's the God honest truth about it. But there is going to be a job out there for you. I swear to God, there will be something out there for you. Just keep applying and don't apply to anything and everything if you're not interested in it. But honestly, just put yourself out there. It wouldn't hurt. You're here in law school. For the most part, you're accumulating all this debt. You might as well just put yourself out there and make it work.
And always write thank you notes, after your interviews. I said that one time after OCI, and someone was like, you wrote a thank you note? I thought you didn't. Why?
Always write thank you notes. You can't write enough thank you notes. They can be via email too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just keep going even when you get a lot of rejections, because it doesn't mean you're not talented, it doesn't mean you're not smart, it just means that something didn't work out there. And a lot of times, like one time I interviewed really early for a state job, and then they forgot about me and hired other people, and then when I followed up like a month or two later, they were like, oh, we hired, sorry. And it was like, but so sometimes it's not because you're like not a good applicant, and don't let that like dishearten you, and just keep going. If you know you're passionate about something, just keep working towards it. And then once you get your job, just like do a really good job at it. Like work as hard as you can there, because then those people that you're looking for now start growing your network, and it's so beneficial for you to have people who can highly recommend you. And I mean, that's been great for me. Like with Ag Council, they asked me back to help them last March with their annual meeting, and I got a couple days paid and like essentially a free vacation down to Huntington Beach, and they only did that because like I worked my butt off for them. So just like when you get that job, like hold on to it and just do all you can to make them happy, and the more you get out of it, the better your next summer will be, because you have so much more experience and so much more to talk to your next interviewer about.
That is great advice too. I got my first postgraduate law practice job. They were interviewing for somebody who had a couple years of experience, which I did not have. I applied anyway. I got passed up for the first round of interviews. All of those interviews, I guess, were miserable, so they called me for a second round, their second round of interviews. And I was not their first choice. They offered the position to a couple other people, and finally, they got down to me. And gosh, I have no experience. Yeah, it's true. And finally, they said, okay, well, we don't know anything about this person. Conveniently, my supervisor from one of my externships, one of my internships during law school, she was friends with the executive director of the law firm, and just the timing worked really nicely, where I had told her, I kept in touch with her, and told her to send her an email, hey, I applied to these 4 places. Do you happen to know anybody at these 4 places? And she said, oh, Bill. And she called Bill right when he was looking at that list, and that's how I got hired. So that's, those connections just kind of keep them alive through the years as you go on through your law school experience. I would like to really give a round of applause to our panelists. Your wisdom is absolutely invaluable, so thank you, and feel free to use the CDO for any other additional help you need with your job search. Thank you.
I was told that anyone ever tell you about that.